We don't look at rail at all. We have no idea what's coming into the country through rail. We simply don't have the staff to do it.
Trudeau's ministers don't take a break from Looney Land. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David, and today's top stories, we've got Melanie Joly, Justin Trudeau's Minister of Foreign Affairs, off her rocker. She is an absolute cuckoo clock. She's asked about these hordes of people heading towards Canada that are going to be flooding into our streets, migrants escaping America. Her response is remarkable. We also got Chrystia Freeland. She was questioned more on this whole situation. She does not want to be on the podium talking anymore. It's quite clear. We've also got Vasi Kapelos having an interview with a CBSA officer who's made it very clear that our borders are not protected. They are wide open. So let's jump into it. We got this one here. Melanie Joly says Canada's ready for possible mass influx of migrants from the US. So we've been covering this story here for over the past week. You got to listen to what she says here. Leave it to Melanie Joly just to sound like a complete idiot on national television.
Impact on Canada. Just have a listen to this.
So where do you think the illegal immigrants are going to flee to when our southern border is shut down, the northern border? So Canada needs to be prepared.
It's a little bit cut off here. It says former ambassador to Canada, Kelly Craft, which is who's speaking right now.
So, Minister, that's a pretty stark warning that, the mass deportation policies that Trump was elected on could potentially send people north, or it could reroute fentanyl trafficking and other things coming from the southern border into Canada. What do you make of this warning?
We need to bear in mind that, yes, indeed, President-elect Trump has said that migration was a key priority for him. And so, therefore, we are ready.
This is what we got. This is what we got. Because Trump said he's got it under control, we're ready. That's what we got here.
But how are you ready, though? If, for example, all the Haitians who are still there in temporary protected status and during Trump won president.
Even David Cochrane, woke CBC David Cochrane, is pushing back against her.
See, just the talk of it had people fleeing for the Canadian border. Now he's talking about mass deportations, potentially millions of people. That's going to be an added incentive for people to flee for safety, and they're unlikely to head towards Mexico. I mean, how do you deal with this potential movement of desperate humans if this comes to pass?
So, David, of course, I won't give you the entire plan right now as you're asking me the question, because I think we need to have the first conversations with the Trump administration. We need to understand their concerns. We need to understand their plan, of course, and we will work through the CBSA, which is in charge of our border protection. We will make sure that indeed this northern border, which has been extremely effective and extremely well guarded because it's the longest and safest border in the world, stays the same. And so we have that in common with the Americans, that we believe that border protection is important. Right. And so, therefore, we'll have these conversations. They may be tough conversations, but I'm never shy of having tough conversations. And I think that Americans expect us to have tough conversations with them, too.
She is unbelievable. We like having tough conversations. I've had a tough conversation. I swear there's nothing going on in there. You might find a couple of birds just... It's like the Looney Tunes cartoon. You look, doo, doo, doo. I'm genuinely convinced we could stick a goat in her position. The goat would definitely be more strategic in making decisions on foreign policy here.
That's diplomacy, and that's why diplomacy was actually invented, David.
Oh, okay, that's why diplomacy was invented. I totally forgot. It's because tough conversations had to be had. But she likes tough conversations. That's why they invented diplomacy. Whew, I was worried there. I didn't think we'd get an answer to that difficult question. Thank goodness we got Melanie Joly here, just knocking them out of the park.
No, I appreciate that. And I suspect you'll have some tough conversations on defense. As you mentioned, there is a renewed focus on...
We're going to jump over to X here and just take a look at the comments. This is not a serious person. We need better politicians. Are there none of us better than her? Look at this. Don't worry, guys. Trudeau's floozy has a plan. Smug, effing useless, gaslighting, liberal Joly. Deal with it. The military at our border and telling them they aren't coming into a sovereign country. It is easy, but these liberals don't care about hurting Canadians. Trudeau and Joly have a plan to have the RCMP and the CBSA provide valet services at the border, as well to hotel accommodations across Canada for these new migrants from the USA. I wouldn't be surprised. Why is this broad smirking? That's a great question. She has that stupid, arrogant little smug smirk. Like she knows something nasty is about to happen to us. Gosh, she doesn't instill any confidence whatsoever. With this situation at the border, we've got Border Guards Union president on concerning staffing levels. They're worried that we don't have enough staff at the borders and people are just going to flood into Canada.
I think we worked successfully with the Americans over decades to manage this large, undefended, long undefended border. I'm briefed regularly, and as recently as this morning, by the Commissioner of the RCMP, Border Services, CSIS, on some of the preparations that are always undertaken at the border.
Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc on this program moments ago when I asked him about scrutiny on the northern border coming from none other than Donald Trump's new border czar. Tom Hammond claims people from countries that sponsor terror use Canada as a gateway into the States. He says he expects to have tough conversations with the federal government here about the situation along our shared border, which he calls a, quote, extreme national security vulnerability. Here are some recent numbers about that. This year, U.S. Border Patrol agents have had more than 23,000 encounters with people illegally or irregularly crossing from Canada to the U.S. That's more than twice as many as the 10,000 encountered in 2023. And comparatively, back in 2022, there were just over 2,200 encounters. So what does that look like?
Yeah, let's look at those numbers again. So 916 cut off on the screen there, up to 2238, up to 10,000, up to 23,000. This is a major problem here. Counters with migrants at Canada-US border. You got to think these numbers have to be skyrocketing right now with so many people fleeing America.
So what does that look like right at the border? Mark Weber is the national president of the Customs and Immigration Union. Donald Trump's new so-called border czar calls the northern border specifically in his most recent interview a huge national security issue. What's your reaction to that characterization?
Yeah, I mean, statements like that are concerning. Time will tell, as to what the effect will be at our borders with statements like that. So far, we haven't really seen much of an increase in the amount of claimants we're getting. But like I said, time will tell.
I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now.
So my understanding is there's kind of two separate issues. The possibility, because of the deportation program that Trump is promising, that there is an increase, as you mentioned. The second is what this gentleman was focused on, which seemed to be what's happening right now, vis-a-vis, as he called it, human smuggling. So people who are essentially trying to get asylum in the U.S. by backdooring it through Canada. There we have objectively seen the numbers increase, according to the border on the other side. I'm just wondering, based on your membership, are you seeing that in particular, that kind of increase, and is it worrisome to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's concerning across the board. I think it's fair to say that these have been concerns for a long time. This isn't something new. CBSA currently, we estimate we need between 2,000 and 3,000 more officers at our borders just to deal with the volume that we're seeing right now. Of course, if that volume increases, that's only going to get worse, right?
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So this whole thing about the border, we've been to the border. We've been to the border.
You haven't been to the border.
And I haven't been to Europe. I mean, I don't understand the point that you're making.
I hear a lot of people say, the talk of a mass deportation is racist. It's threatening to the immigrant community. It's not threatening to the immigrant community. They should be threatening to the illegal immigrant community.
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Can you expand on the need for that? How long, for Canadians who maybe aren't familiar with the resourcing issue, how long has that been your view that you're that short-staffed? And how long have you essentially been making the case to the federal government that needs to be fixed?
We've been making that case at every opportunity for years. We've seen our numbers over, I'd say, the last decade slowly whittle down, and we see the CBSA relying largely on ill-conceived technologies. We see things like ArriveCan, like CARM. We see more and more and more automation and less officers. Of course, if you're trying to catch smugglers, you need the people there to do that work. The CBSA seems very focused on facilitation. It's about getting people through as quickly as possible with as little interaction as possible with an officer, which of course lessens security, right?
less insecurity. Also the fact that we've got a Khalistani guy who's a CBSA officer that India has accused of trying to get in all the terror lords out of India into Canada. This guy's saying it's pretty much weak security. Sign your own declaration. Yeah, not a bad guy. No.
Have you seen that from a qualitative perspective as well? Like, just what you were saying there is kind of interesting. I don't think I would have known that. Obviously, automation is happening everywhere, but the idea that, you know, is there less time to talk to people who you do stop, let's say, or who are going through legal means? Like, has that changed?
Sure. I mean, we used to talk, to give an example, at airports, we used to speak with every traveler coming through. We speak to almost no one anymore. It's almost fully automated. We're largely relying on self-declaration. I mean, fingers crossed, we're waiting for the first smuggler to self-declare, but I'm not holding my breath. That's not going to happen, and that's not really what our job is or how things work. The CBSA seems to be really trying to more and more push that idea of facilitation over security. It's concerning.
Do you think, let's say, hiring 2,000 more people would make a discernible difference at the border? Like, what would that difference look like from your perspective?
It would make a huge difference in our ability to actually interact with travelers, to search the cars, to search the bags, to even do modes that we don't currently do. We don't look at rail at all. We have no idea what's coming into the country through rail. We simply don't have the staff to do it. We're looking at fully automating, self-declaring cruise ships, like I said, at airports. I mean, we all go through airports and you don't see or really speak to anyone anymore. It's extremely concerning. It's disheartening for our members. Obviously, they get into this line of work because, you know, they want to keep Canadians safe. They want to keep things out of the country that Canada doesn't want to get into the country. And they see that really being taken away from them through all these different kinds of automation.
Is not an emergency. We are not facing a crisis.
We have a president of the United States who has created a fiction about a crisis at the border, and he has held up the United States government and its workers around his vanity project called a wall.
To the criminal cartels in Mexico. You smuggled enough fentanyl across this country to kill 148,000 young Americans. You have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. And that's when President Trump gets back in office. He's going to designate you a terrorist organization, and he's going to wipe you off the face of the earth. You're done. You're done.
Woo, okay. You can't really argue with those numbers, though. I mean, taking out that many Americans, maybe it's time to clean up the cartel.
What's the perspective on for example, the St. Lawrence River? What is the patrol of that like from where you sit?
It's a source of concern. Currently, the CBSA does not patrol at all between ports of entry. We should be. Again, we simply don't have the mandate or the staff to be able to do that. So that's left completely to the RCMP or provincial police to do. And of course, they're short-staffed as well. So
basically, we don't have enough staff for all the security stuff. Where's all our money going? I wonder, where's it going? Maybe we should check Trudeau's bank account. If only we had an extra $400 million to put towards this. There's so much savings to be had. The SDTC scandal, the accelerator fund, cutting the carbon tax, the money that's used to administer the carbon tax. There is so much money that could be put into the places it should be, but Trudeau has done everything possible to bring in the bad guys. He's been very successful at that. He really has. We need a conservative government sooner rather than later at this rate. Let's hope the NDP gets their act together and triggers an election early. Yeah, right. That's not going to happen. Jagmeet doesn't care. But diversity is our strength. It sounds like he's saying the border guard agents have no mandate to screen anyone. He seems to stop short of saying our borders are wide open. That's basically what I took from this. It sounds like they are completely wide open, but considering how many terror lords we have running in our streets these days, are we really surprised? Next up, we got this article here. It says budget officer finds the Trans Mountain Pipeline a money loser after Freeland insisted it wasn't. Yves Giroux, the same guy, did the calculations for the carbon tax. He has announced that the Trans Mountain Pipeline here is worth less than $34.2 billion it cost to build it. This doesn't mesh with Freeland's testimony before a parliamentary committee last Monday, where she maintained the pipeline, which the Liberal government bought in 2018, is worth its price tag, adding, "I hope that we're going to sell it for more." Wouldn't you know? It's another money loser. Chrystia Freeland came to committee and completely gaslit us on the benefits of TMX. TMX's construction cost ballooned from the estimated $7.4 billion in 2018 to $34 billion. How does it triple, quadruple, 5 times? You could essentially get 4 or 5 pipelines for the same initial cost. How does that happen? Somebody must be getting rich. So you can see here that parliamentary budget officer estimated right here, it's valued between 29.6 and 33.4 billion. So it is a loss. This doesn't mean the buyer would be willing to pay that much to acquire the pipeline system. And even if they were, the sale would result in losses between 5.6 billion to 15.2 billion, according to the PBO's numbers. Why doesn't the government just keep it then, operate it, run it as a business that makes money for Canada? It makes absolutely no sense to be selling it at a 15 billion loss. Is anyone surprised here though? Chrystia Freeland, just an absolute disaster, just ruining our country. Next up, we got this. So going back to Remembrance Day here, we've got the mayor of Vancouver, Ken Sim, and he shows up with his fresh white kicks. Does this guy not understand this looks ridiculous? I mean, look at every single person here is dressed up. If you're going up, you're going to be going up here to lay out a wreath. Put on a suit. Look professional. Put some nice shoes on. It says a lot about this guy. We had another press conference today with Chrystia Freeland. She looked equally just twitchy and weird and just all over the place. She couldn't handle the press very well. We got one short clip for you here because I know you don't want to hear her voice.
The union representing the CBSA says they're up to 3,000 officers short to patrol the border properly at this time, should there be this influx of migrants that Donald Trump has essentially promised at this point. So does that mean you're going to meet their asks when you say you're going to increase resources?
Okay, there were very many hypotheticals embedded in that question. So let me simply say we take border security absolutely seriously. It is, first of all, a priority for Canadians, and it is an absolutely legitimate priority for Canadians.
So she's stalling, and anytime they say we take something very serious, which means they don't take it serious.
And we will ensure that Canada's borders are secure and that we have the necessary resources to ensure that they're secure.
So we can take from that our borders won't be secure. They're not secure. They won't be. People will be flooding in. We're going to see some crazy stuff going on here in the next 2, 3, 4 months. Jumping over to my group here, see what memes we've got today. Ours may become the first civilization destroyed not by the power of our enemies, but by the ignorance of our teachers and the dangerous nonsense they're teaching our children. Yes, this is correct. $18 billion filibuster freezes House. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland's office yesterday had no comment on what, if any, contingencies it has to deal with a 7-week filibuster that has gridlocked the Commons. Freeland was counting on a quick passage of an $18 billion hike in capital gains taxes by Christmas. It's an important moment. Yeah, so she can't get that capital gains hike to go through because nothing is moving. So they're screwed. They have to hand over the documents, but clearly there's something in there that will put somebody in jail. So that's why they're not doing it. If there's nothing scathing in those documents, they just hand them over to the police. It's not like they're handing them over to John Doe on the side of the street. It's the RCMP. Mississauga holds ban on street sports, including hockey and basketball. I don't know if this is true, but that is ridiculous. I grew up playing ball hockey on the street every day. Canadian citizenship inside. This is amazing. Cracker Jack, the original. It's like a Willy Wonka ticket here. That's it. Except it's not rare. You don't need to find the golden ticket. You just show up at the door and Justin Trudeau lets you in. You go stay in a hotel. He'll give you a ton of money as long as you vote Liberal. Kevin O'Leary says a goat would be better running Canada. There it is. Let's get the goat. Goat for PM. So I'm not going to play this video, but it says York U and UTM lecturer shouts FU to veterans on Remembrance Day. There is a video of this, which this does happen. She's driving by, rolls down her window and yells that it's disgraceful. So we've got this happening now in Canada. This is in Hamilton, Ontario. Standing here with a mass deportation sign now. I mean, this is what happens when you push people to the brink where you can't afford anything. It's like, well, how do you expect people to react when you got people coming in from the other side of the world that are bringing not good, but bad, lots of bad. There's plenty of people that come here and bring good, you know, good culture, good people, good manners. We're having an awful amount of people bringing a lot of bad. We got, you know, the car thieves, all that stuff. Stealing fish during the salmon run, dropping hot corals on the beach. There's endless examples. Poverty exists not because we cannot feed the poor, but because we cannot satisfy the rich. They turned us against each other to distract us from turning against them. Let me in, I'm depressed because of Trump. Have you considered... Oh, this is Too close to home. That is too close to home, that one. Bankrupting Canada for Dummies. How to spend billions and have nothing to show. The Liberal edition. That's where we're going to leave this one common Canadian phrase. Every day it's just something else. Today it's the CBSA. You know, we got that guy just coming on the show there and saying, the border's open. It's wide open. And with it being wide open and so many people wanting to come in, what is going to happen to Canada in the next couple months?